I mean, you have $130 million. There's 5 guys on your roster. That's it. So you're left with the veteran minimum exception. You're left with your $5.9 million tax mid-level. What really hurt them was Alex Caruso going to the Bulls.
Yeah.
Because you had bird rights on him. You could have exceeded the cap. You still have Talen Horton-Tucker as a restricted free agent. This is kind of the name to keep an eye on. Not as far as returning back to the Lakers. You still have bird rights. You can maybe go out and do a sign and trade, and maybe you can flip Schroeder to a team and bring back multiple players here. The market is chilly right now.
Yeah.
I mean, there is limited spending out there, and maybe you can take a team and flip him to a team that needs point guard. But Trevor Ariza, Dwight Howard, Wayne Ellington, guys who had played there before are all back, but that's what happens when you have $130 million committed to 5 players.
Yeah, Laker fans wonder if they can maybe use that asset to go get a shooter to put on that squad as well. And lastly, let's go up to Chicago because they added a pair to the backcourt there. It's been a while since Chicago's been in the mix or doing something. They're trying to build a little something here in the interim.
I loved what Chicago was able to do. Point guard was a priority for them, especially with Kobe White out for an extended period of time. And they had limited flexibility, so they acted as a team over the salary cap. So what they were able to do is they were able to flip Tomas Satoransky, and then use Garrett Temple in a sign and trade, and then they go out and get Lonzo Ball. That is a good move for them as far as an upgrade there.
Right.
Alex Caruso on the mid-level exception. The big question is going to be, and Brian Windhorst talked about it this morning, Zach LaVine, renegotiation eligible. They don't have cap space right now to go out and do it. But the roster is improved.
Yeah.
And that's the big goal. So he can still sign a big contract next offseason, but he's going to have to wait. But I think the goal is improve the roster around him, let him wait 1 year, and that money will be sitting there.
Yeah, and that's the thing for him. If they make a run to the playoffs like the Knicks did out of nowhere, maybe that'll satisfy him for this season and get paid in the summer of 2022. Bobby Marks stays paid. Look at that suit. You can't hide money, folks, and that's what Bobby Marks. And from the Knicks for the next 4 seasons, aside from giving Team USA fits in Tokyo last week, the 9-year vet averaged 17 points a night last season. We also saw one of the Ball brothers on the move. Lonzo heading to the Windy City for $85 million over 4 years. The eldest Ball brother coming off a career season. He upped his points, his field goal percentage, his three-point, and free throw shooting down there in New Orleans. And joining Ball in Chicago, Alex Caruso. The former Lakers teammates reuniting with the Bulls. Caruso gets $37 million for the next 4 years. A key contributor and a fan favorite on that Lakers 2020 squad. He shot 40% from 3 last season. And speaking of the Lakers, they made a flurry of moves, bringing Dwight Howard, Trevor Ariza, and Wayne Ellington back to LA for another run. The trio expected to give some depth to the Lakers after that Russell Westbrook trade. Howard on his 3rd stint in LA, while Ariza and Ellington returned for their 2nd run in purple and gold. All right, some other notable free agency deals include the Pelicans acquiring Devontae Graham via sign and trade with the Hornets, and the Spurs adding Doug McDermott. The Suns re-signed backup point guard Cam Payne, and the Knicks re-signed one of the best shot blockers in the league, Nerlens Noel. To give us more insight on how all this stuff happened, NBA front office insider Bobby Marks joins us here on SportsCenter. Let's start with the Knicks because they went into this free agency period with a lot of room under that salary cap. They get Fournier, they keep some others in the fold. What do you make of what they were able to do there in New York?
Yeah, I mean, they were sitting in the pole position with over $50 million in cap space. Yeah. I call them team continuity. There's nothing wrong with rolling back the group that lost in the first round here. I just didn't see this group of free agents, going out and committing. I know they went out and spent 4 years, $76 million on Evan Fournier.
Yeah.
But there's nothing wrong with bringing back a player like, we saw Derrick Rose go back, $13 million, salary. You see the room start going down when you look at players like, certainly Fournier. That number was a little bit higher than I had it projected at. I mean, you're looking at, right at, $17 million. They went out and got Nerlens Noel they brought back, Alec Burks, who's on here right at that $10 million number that we projected at. And then you just see that money keep on going down, and then Noel filled out that remaining $14 million slot. So they bring back the same group. I know that's not going to sell headlines in New York City, but this is still kind of a retooling process. They're not up there with the big boys, right?
Yeah.
They're not there yet. Plus, they have controllable contracts in case that next disgruntled all-star becomes available. They've got contracts. They've got draft picks to go out and maybe do a deal.
They're ahead of the game in terms of their rebuild there in New York. So Knicks fans, just ease up a little bit. This is not bad. This is really good for your future going forward. Arch, let's talk about the Lakers on the other coast. They bring in some other guys to help surround the big three there. What about these moves that Rob Pelinka was able to pull off?
Yeah, I mean, this is
should we call NBA expensive agency? There is nothing free about these guys. Are all signing big tickets. And the first day of free agency full of action. The big players were on South Beach. Miami Heat working towards completing a sign and trade. Bringing Kyle Lowry from the Raptors. 2019 champion, expect to snag a 3-year deal. Then the Heat turned towards one of their own. Working on a max extension with Jimmy Butler. Have to have him in the fold. The 31-year-old led the Heat to the 2020 NBA Finals. Posted career highs last season in field goal percentage, assists, and led the NBA in steals. And also the Heat took care of sharpshooter Duncan Robinson, agreeing to a 5-year, $90 million deal. Get this, that's the largest ticket by any undrafted player in league history. Robinson joined Steph Curry. Robinson joining Steph Curry and Klay Thompson as the only players with multiple seasons of 250 made threes while shooting over 40%. And then the late word, Tim Bontemps is confirming P.J. Tucker signs a 2-year, like $15 million deal. So you look at how the Heat project for next season. Let's just say they project really well. Wow. A star-studded lineup they can throw out on the court now. NBA front office insider Bobby Marks joining us now. And Pat Riley had himself a day, huh?
Man, you got to bring out the big calculator for this.
Wow. and we have something along those lines here. But what a day for Riley and the Heat. And, maybe completely transforming their roster now. Obviously, took care of some of their own. But you tell me, where do you want to start here? And how much better are the Heat today than they were yesterday?
Yeah, well, I'll start with it. They're a top 3 team in the Eastern Conference. I'm putting them up there with Brooklyn. I'm putting them up with Milwaukee, ahead of Philadelphia. I think these moves solidify that, especially with Kyle Lowry. I think the gymnastics as far as how they were able to do everything, it started yesterday with Goran Dragic exercising his $19.4 million option. That allowed them to stay over the salary cap. They didn't go under the cap. They could have signed Lowry outright if they wanted to. They didn't do that. And when you take a player out like, Dragic and probably Precious Achiuwa, and then you add Kyle, into that mix, his number is going to be a little bit higher than that 25, right around 27. That keeps you in the game here. What they were able to do, though, is Duncan Robinson. You had his bird right, so now you can exceed the salary cap to bring him back right around $16 million, and you keep on adding, and they'll be able to stay under the luxury tax, under the hard cap. When you look at here, they're under, and then you look at a player like, we'll see where P.J. Tucker is down here. I think we might even have him in the 4s. Yeah, we got him in the 4s. And then you had P.J. Tucker, because what happened is that you still had here's PJ, you still had your mid-level exception. So you had your $9.5 million mid-level exception. PJ gets about $7 million of that. And then when you slide him in there, you're still under the luxury tax. And
How's that possible?
And you can fill out the rest of your roster with minimum guys. You're probably going to lose Kendrick Nunn, who's a restricted free agent. But, yeah, you basically have turned over your roster, 2 years after they made the Jimmy Butler deal, something into nothing, and now this is a top 3 team in the Eastern Conference.
Yeah. That is amazing how quickly you can transform. It's also amazing how you can go the other way. Toronto was 2 years ago, right?
Yep.
The Raptors were unrecognizable now from that championship club. What happens if I tap on this Kyle Lowry? Like, the whole thing explodes?
No, not yet.
All right. But how quickly it can change in the NBA, right?
It can turn quickly, and they were able to. Hey, you get swept by Milwaukee last year in the first round, like change.